Hey guys, let's talk about what you should understand about salary before you apply on USAjobs.gov. Now, each GS grade has a scale on the pay chart. And let's say you're talking about GS 11 or GS 12, whatever it is, from step 1 to step 10. That pay range is meant to last 20 years. So take, for example, let's look at a GS 12 in Washington, D.C. That starts at $89,000 a year to $116,000 a year. So if you're making $100,000 at your job currently and you want to apply for a GS 12, do not take it for granted that they will match your salary. There's a negotiation process. But for the most part, when someone enters into the government, it's usually at the step 1 level. Now, in the private sector, there's more negotiation. For example, if you get hired or if you receive a job offer, they will ask you, what is your number? What are you willing to accept for a salary? This isn't the case in the government. When they give you a job offer, they're basically telling you the grade and step they're giving you. So you can accept it, or you can enter into negotiation and try to get a higher step because you're superior qualified. But they will not necessarily prompt you to do this. You have to take the initiative. So it's not a back and forth where they offer you $80,000 and you come back and say, well, I wanted 90, but can we settle at 85? That's not how the process really works. So unless you negotiate, you will be taking a pay cut. So do not look at the announcement and the salary range and think, oh, I should be good. I make $100,000, so I fit within this range. You really have to understand that when you're looking at the salary range for a grade, you're looking at 20 years. And many people are undercutting themselves when they enter into the federal government. So for whatever reason, we have people applying for GS 6 or GS 7 or GS 9, when here they are on the private sector making 6 figures because they want to get their foot in the door. Well, I completely disagree with that. In fact, if you want to know more about the get your foot in the door mentality, check out my video above. I made a whole separate video covering that topic. Another thing you need to consider is you have to check the cost of living in the area that you're moving to. So we have individuals, let's say in Missouri, Nebraska, Kansas, you know, the lower cost areas, and say they're pulling in $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. And then they look in an area like San Francisco or New York City or even Washington, D.C., and they see a salary of $100,000. And they're thinking in their head that I'll be making $50,000 more a year if I move from Nowhereville, Kansas City, and I go over to Washington, D.C. But they don't take into consideration that the cost of living is dramatically higher. So in order to get a house, even a small, let's say 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom studio apartment, whatever it is that'll suit your needs, you're looking at, close to $2,000 a month. And back in Kansas, that was running you maybe $700, maybe $650. So it's not the same. It's not really comparable. You need to do your research before even applying to these jobs, because what will end up happening is you'll apply, you'll go through this long process, and 4 or 5 months later, you're left with the decision. You have the offer in your hands, and now you're inputting the numbers in the calculator, and it's not adding up. Another thing to take into consideration is the time off and the pension. So I've talked about this in previous videos, but the pension is one of the most lucrative and the most highly desired aspect of the federal government job. Because we're not talking about 401ks or instruments that are tied to the market. We are talking about a guaranteed check after you meet so many years in. I believe the first time you get the pension is 5 years, and then it's 10 years, and then it keeps, as you extend forward, you end up getting more money every year. So yeah, you might be making more in the private sector right now. You might be 20 years old in your 30s, but as you get older, let's say you're in your upper 30s, your 40s, you're approaching your 50s, now you're thinking about, well, what kind of security do I really have? Because if you're retiring with your IRA or your 401k and the market enters a recession, then we're in trouble. So that pension provides financial security. And that's another aspect you really need to consider when weighing in the salary expectations. Also consider when you're applying that salary does not necessarily equate experience. Now, this goes both ways. You could be making a high salary in an organization, but your skills might not match the GS grade that matches the salary, if that makes any sense. If not, just stay with me. So in the military, we have E4s, and they don't make much money. So let's say probably roughly 50, 60,000 a year. So we have this E4, but a lot of the E4s, say in the IT field, they're getting the skill sets, they're getting certifications, they understand how to do coding or networking or cybersecurity. They can actually command a higher salary. They can enter in at GS12, GS13, maybe some of them GS14, even though they were an E4 and they were making 60,000. They can make well over 6 figures in the government. So you really need to think, what skill set do you possess? What type of experience do you possess? You combine those and then you're trying to figure out what grade level you should be applying for. But whatever you do, if you cannot afford to take that grade level, do not apply for that grade level. In my experience, I did 20 years in the military, and I was fortunate enough to find a position that was somewhere near what I was used to. So my skills lined up, the money for the most part lined up, so I was able to make a clean transfer, so to speak, and I wasn't dramatically impacted one way or the other. But that type of thing, it requires planning. It requires researching. You really need to know how to narrow in on your focus, what job series, what grade level, what location. So wherever you're at, say you're in private sector, say you're in the military, wherever you're at, you need to have that vision on where you're going to end up in the next 6 to 12 months, because in reality, a lot of the federal hiring can take that long. All right, so that pretty much wraps up this video. If you have any questions or comments, or you felt like I missed something, leave that down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.